All right, so let's talk Enlightenment. So let's recap first everything that we've talked about prior to Enlightenment, as far as the Renaissance and the scientific revolution. So the Renaissance led to new knowledge and new thinking as we started diving back into what the ancient Greeks and Roman scholars developed, and there was this rebirth of knowledge that was starting to spread all throughout Europe. And at this time, we started getting people like Copernicus, Kepler, Isaac Newton, Galileo Galilei, started coming in with all these theories about the universe. They really started looking more into scientific studies. As they got new knowledge, they began to feel more comfortable with what they were researching. And you had these theories that first the Earth was the center of the universe, then it was the sun, then we talked about the orbit of the universe and gravity. And not all of these ideas, in fact, many of these ideas were not widely accepted. The Catholic Church, for example, were already feeling a lot of pressure. They had been selling indulgences and people weren't seeing it working, and the plague was running rampant just prior to the Renaissance and even throughout some of the Renaissance. And people weren't seeing the Catholic Church doing some of the things they promised. And people were starting to say that maybe at this time the Catholic Church was corrupt. And so they were doing everything they could, the Catholic Church, to grasp at authority and to hold on to what power they had. Because remember, they were basically the government of the time period. They ruled everything. And they didn't want to lose that power. And everything they had been teaching was that the earth was the center of everything. So when these scientists started saying the sun is the center of everything, they're blatantly going in the face of everything the Catholic Church is teaching. And the Catholic Church was not happy. They started saying that these men were heretics and punishing many of them for their scientific studies. But that led to Enlightenment. So Enlightenment, or being enlightened, is this period of time where there's intellectual and spiritual growth. It's this freedom to instruct and to impart knowledge. The idea is they're emphasizing reason and individualism rather than tradition. It's going against, this is the way we've always done it, and starting to really put logic and evidence and data and what people are studying into focus. So we're going to talk about some of these people of this time period. The first was Sir Francis Bacon. Sir Francis Bacon was very wealthy, very well educated, until his father's death. In fact, his father was part of the monarchy's council. He was able to go on to college when he was about 12 years old. He studied a lot. He had pretty much everything he could imagine. But when his father died, he had to leave school. He came home to help with his family. There wasn't much of an inheritance, and he was left with basically nothing. So he went to his uncle for help, and his uncle was not able to help him. His uncle kind of just turned him away and was like, dude, you're on your own. And so now Sir Francis Bacon went from having everything and the world at his fingertips to scrounging around trying to figure out ways to make ends and still follow his passion. But he worked his way up. He got small jobs and was able to continue building until he got a promotion, all the way up until 1618, when he was named Lord Chancellor of England, which is a big deal. That's like, it's hard to describe it here, but bigger than a senator or anything like that. He's worked his way up to like, I don't know, Secretary of State or Vice President, that kind of position. And so he has a lot of respect. But then he's accused of corruption within the government. And he's put on trial, and it's this long trial, and he's thrown in the Tower of London, which is like the worst of the prisons. And his punishment is supposed to be life in prison, and he has all these fines. And somehow he gets it negotiated down to where he doesn't have to pay any fines, and he's released after 4 days, which is quite a jump to go from life in prison to 4 days in prison. But as part of his punishment, he was basically stripped of all of his titles. He was no longer Lord Chancellor of England. And he was kind of a nothing now. He was followed around in shame. People knew his name as synonymous of somebody who had tried to defraud the government, basically. And so he couldn't get a job in anything he wanted to. And he resorted back to science. That was his true passion. He's like, well, hey, I've got a lot of free time now. I'm without a job, without money. I can study things instead. And so he really believed in experimentation, and through that, he developed the scientific method, which I'm sure you've learned about in science up until this point. But the basic steps are about forming a hypothesis. Like you've seen something, you get an idea, so you form a hypothesis, an idea of what's actually happened. And then he wanted to emphasize, after you've got an idea, do experiments, collect data, do as many experiments as you want, and make observations, continue to collect that data. Then you analyze it, and you come up with your solution. And so he started publishing texts about his methods. They became really well known. We still use the scientific method today, and that is all in part to Sir Francis Bacon, this guy right here. The next one is Hobbes. Hobbes was an English philosopher who wrote about government and law. So he believed all of society should be under one authority. And that one authority should control civil, like laws, military, judicial branches, like courts and that kind of thing, and even the religious powers. He felt like there should be one person in charge of every aspect of the country. And that one person then should protect everyone. And in order for all of society to get protection, you're going to have to give up some of your rights, because this one authority is going to tell you everything that you're allowed to do and what to do. But that's okay. You give up those rights because that one authority is also going to make sure that you are taken care of. So he had kind of this weird argument, and he did it in steps. He argued first that human nature was selfish, that inherently all humans are, you might be a nice person, but you will do whatever you want if it's for your benefit. So you can help people all you want, but if you see something else, if it comes down to helping someone else or doing something for you, human nature says you're always going to do what benefits you. That's what Hobbes believed, and that's what he argued, that human nature is to be selfish. But he also argued that all humans are equal because we are all strong enough to kill each other. This was his actual argument, that all humans are strong enough to kill each other, no matter their age or where they are at in life. He argued that a toddler could kill a grown man if the grown man was asleep. So we're all equal because all humans are able to kill each other and all humans are selfish. So his argument was, we need this one strong government, because what would human life be like without a government? If we're all selfish murderers, basically, what would life be like without laws and this one government? Not everyone agreed with Hobbes. I mean, even as you listen to it, you're probably thinking, okay, some of this is a little bit cray-cray. And you're right. And that's what people thought at that time, too. The first thing that really upset a lot of people is they said that he was trying to incite rebellion because he kept saying everyone was equal. Everyone was equal. And at this time, men and women weren't equal, but you also had the different races that weren't considered equal, but even different social classes. The wealthier people had a lot more power and helped run the government. And so they're saying, dude, you're telling poor people that they're equal to us? No, you can't tell them that. They'll rise up against us. And so people were getting really upset with him for that. A lot of people also said, wait a minute, no. Human nature is not to be selfish. Sure, there are some selfish people around here, but most humans are actually good people. So they didn't like that argument. And some people were just really afraid of an all-powerful government. He's saying that one person should be in charge of everything, and they kind of were like, no, I don't want to give up that much. Even though some of these ideas seem crazy, his ideas are still studied in philosophy and government courses to this day. Most philosophy majors, or even anyone that goes into political science or government, is going to know about his theories. And there he is. Kind of has a scary look to him, if you ask me. Then you have John Locke. John Locke was an English philosopher who actually studied medicine, though that's not what he's most known for now. At the time, he was actually very well known for medicine. He was very interested in it, studied it until he was one of the best doctors of his time period for a short time. But he basically preached that all people naturally possess certain rights, and those rights are the rights of life, liberty, and property. And he said that rulers actually get their power from the consent of the people. So he says all people have these certain rights, and they have to give up some of their rights in order to have a just ruler. Not just a ruler, but a just ruler. A fair ruler that's looking out for their country. And he says, so then the ruler should consider his people when he does that. Understand the sacrifices that they've made to put you into power, and you should take care of them. And it's almost like a warning that he's doing too. This could have been considered inciting rebellion too, because what he's saying is, hey, rulers, understand that you're only there because we're not rioting, that we're willing to give up power for you. But if you don't take care of us, we might riot, and we're not going to be willing to give up our rights for you anymore. So he also argued, and this is probably what he's most famous for, at least nowadays, that the human mind starts out as what they say a tabula rasa, which is a smooth tablet. And no, we're not talking a tablet like an iPad. A tablet at the time would be like a piece of stone, almost like chalkboard type thing, that has not been written on. So at the time, everyone kind of believed that all babies and children are born with a certain amount of knowledge, and then we just add to it. But there are just certain things that all babies automatically know when they're born. And he argues the opposite. He argues that the argument, instead of smooth tablet, a lot of people say the blank slate, that all babies are born a complete blank slate. And as they grow up, we fill them with information, and that is what they learn. And so then he also argued that character formation is more important than information. That when you come down to teaching and you're teaching a young child, it's important that we build up their character and who they are, and then we can add knowledge and teach them more information. But who they are as a person is most important. And his ideas were actually used in the Declaration of Independence. When I read that about life, liberty, and property, hopefully it sounded a little bit familiar to you as you look at the Declaration of Independence, and it says that we all are guaranteed inalienable rights, the pursuit of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So they took John Locke's ideas and put that in our own Declaration of Independence. There he is, looking out deep into space, just kind of a blank slate right there. All right. So then you have Descartes. I know it looks like Descartes, but it's a French name. It's Rene Descartes. And he was a French philosopher who literally questioned everything. His whole idea was that we should ask questions all the time. That's how we get information. And you should question whether or not anything exists. In fact, there were times when he questioned whether or not he himself existed. Like, am I really here? Who knows? But he came up with this expression that you've probably heard before. It's fairly famous, and it's, I think, therefore I am. So he was wrestling with this idea of whether or not he existed, and he realized he was thinking about it, and the very act of thinking proved that he existed. So if you are a thinking body and you can question things, then you exist. He really loved science. And part of science is that proving things with fact. And so he only trusted things that you could see or believe without a shred of doubt. If somebody could put just a little bit of doubt in an idea, then it didn't exist. It wasn't there. He didn't believe in it. And so anything that was doubted was rejected, including the church. If anyone could say something against the church or be able to say that God didn't exist, then God doesn't exist to him. But it wasn't just religion. Descartes didn't even believe in his own senses. Like, if you can't trust a smell or trust what you see, then it can't exist. So really what he ended up saying was he only trusted math because it was something he could scientifically prove. 2 plus 2 always equals 4 without a shred of doubt. And he came down to reality is literally just the mind and the body. So this is Descartes. The next person was Rousseau. So Rousseau is a creative writer from France, and he would take all of his ideas and write them in anything he could, whether it be pamphlets, novels. He even wrote operas to express his ideas. But he believed that all humans are born good. We're all inherently good, that humans don't have a selfish bone in their body inherently, but they're corrupted by society, that the more that you spend around society, the more corrupt you become, the more selfish, and you get those sinful desires. So he said science, art, social institutions like school were all naturally corrupt. And instead, if you want to remain good and learn in the best way, you need to stay close to nature. He also said that all citizens should work together for the good of society. Everyone works together, they join forces, and participate in making the society better, even if that means a sacrifice for you. So if you have to give up something small, or maybe it's big to you, but you have to give up something so that society can be better, that it's worth it, and that is your job as a citizen. And this idea, in a sense, kind of influenced our U.S. Constitution, that everyone needs to work together for the betterment of the country. He very strongly supported education. And at this time, education really just meant boys, in particular wealthy boys, that were able to go to school. But he supported education for men and women. Now, it's a little different, though. He wasn't saying women need to go to school to learn the exact same thing as men. But he also didn't think that women should be banished to the house all day to just cook and clean. He said that women should be able to learn skills that were appropriate for women, and that they should be able to get some knowledge that was appropriate for women. So not necessarily the same thing as boys, but still allowed for education. And part of his education ideas are that children should be allowed free expression. They should be able to be curious. You find what a child is interested in, what they're most passionate about, and then let them be curious. Let them question and explore so that they can learn more about that subject. There he is. All right, the last one is Montesquieu. So Montesquieu, believed that abuse of power, slavery, and intolerance were evil. That, abundance of slavery, abundance of too much power were all evil things that ruin societies. So he developed this idea that the government needed to be divided into 3 branches: the executive branch, the legislative branch, and the judicial branch, and that those 3 branches could then have a system of checks and balances. We still use this today in the U.S. government, and we get this idea from him. So in the U.S. government, the legislative branch can come up with a law, but they cannot pass a law by themselves. It gets voted on, and then the executive branch can veto it if they want. If they say, no. If the legislative branch is coming up with a law that only benefits them, the executive branch can say, no way, you guys are crazy, that's too much power, and they can veto it. Pretty much every branch same with like the judicial branch, can put the executive branch in check. If the executive branch is doing something that shows too much power, the judicial branch can rule against them and say that's not possible. Every branch of our government has to answer to another branch of the government so that no one group becomes too powerful. And that is because of Montesquieu and his ideas. there he is, at least from the side. So, to wrap everything up, the Renaissance led to these new scientific discoveries, this new quest for knowledge, and these new scientific discoveries then open up the door for a new way of thinking. That maybe the things that we've always thought were true aren't true. And so then people started developing new ideas about how learning happens or why people are the way they are. And they really started looking into that. And this new way of thinking then set up this framework for challenging governments. That maybe if people aren't the way we thought they always were, and the universe isn't the way we thought it always was, that maybe governments and the way our countries are ruled are also not supposed to be the way that we've always learned. Remember, just like with Enlightenment, we're focusing on individuals and changing traditions. And so this is going to lead into revolutions.